So what's going on, guys? My name is MrDalekJD and welcome back to the next episode in my series looking at cut content from Call of Duty Zombies. We've taken a fair look at World at War and Black Ops 1, but we still have unfinished business with those games, and we'll be looking over that again in the next episode. But in this episode, we're going to be focusing particularly on the game modes that Call of Duty Zombies has lost over the years. Now, we of course are used to our typical survival mode, going up in those rounds, and we only really have two other game modes since added in Black Ops 2 that have sort of expanded on that zombies experience, but there's been a load more which we've never seen. Now, before we get into this, let me know down below in the comment section which out of these modes you did not know existed and was cut from the Call of Duty games, and if you do enjoy today's video, then feel free to leave a like rating on the video as well. Now, in my first episode we mentioned about a cut game mode from World at War called Payload. This was actually a custom made game mode that Treyarch included inside of the World at War mod tools, and it's almost a sort of test map or a sort of like test game mode for creators to look and see how things are created. And it's a weird mission, as just like the Payload name suggests, you are escorting this payload across the campaign mission, which is also the multiplayer map Silo, and the characters here, these enemies, have a Panzer Shrek called the Panzer Shark, and when they shoot it, these flying sharks come towards you, which is really crazy. Now, what makes me believe this is semi a test thing for devs slash possibly the first chance they had at testing out zombies, or the idea of it, was at the final point of this mission. The standoff here is you have 30 seconds to survive with an unlimited wave of zombies coming towards you, which I think is really cool. Now, the gameplay you're watching is from a YouTuber called MrDalekJD. He seems to be the only person I could find on the internet that's actually played and got gameplay of this mode, which is pretty darn awesome, so big shout out to him. Now, like I mentioned, with this being bundled with the World at War mod tools, it's hard to say if this was an intentional game mode, but it's a really promising thing to see what the potential could be for like co-op sort of zombified missions like this. It's really cool. But now we jump to the real nitty gritty details here. We didn't get brand new zombie game modes until Black Ops 2, and boy oh boy was there supposed to be a lot more in Black Ops 2. As we all know, we had Survival, which was the classic round based mode, and then we had Turned and Grief. I'm sure a lot of you are aware of this, but there were a few other modes planned for zombies that were co-op specified, such as Race and Meat. Now, the specific details on those two game modes has never been properly ever mentioned, and this is going to be the first time that this is going to be spoken about publicly. Now, before we dive into those details, Grief was intended to have a few more additional features to really make it a griefy sort of experience. This includes stuff such as how you could steal weapons when they came out of the mystery box from other people, which I think would have been absolutely amazing. There was another thing as well where you could drain money from downed players on the other team, and this would have been like a revivable motion where you bring out the Surette as you're reviving, and that sort of motion would take points from downed players on the other team, and eventually any player could revive someone. So you could attempt to revive an enemy to block their teammates from doing it, and then abort at the last second and keep looping that over and over. Now, those features do sound really good, but they also do sound pretty damn difficult to like get around if that ever became a thing, where if someone was just grief reviving, that person would definitely never ever get revived, and I'm sure there was some difficulties and things that crept up during those, which is why those were removed. Let me know your thoughts down below in the comment section. What do you think of those features? Do you think they should have been kept, or are you glad that they were removed? Now, the first mode we're going to be talking about that was cut is a mode called Race. This split players into two teams on two separate laned off areas in a map, and the objective was to kill zombies to collect their souls into doors to advance to the next area. Now, this mode was also going to incorporate some features from Grief by having certain power-up drops, for example, that would force the other team to reload by taking away their current magazine. Now, there was a griefy troll sort of mechanic where you could deny the other team zombie kills by killing their zombies by shooting over the fence. Now this didn't count towards souls for your own door. You could be focusing on sealing the other team's zombie kills while the rest of your teammates focused on killing your actual own zombies in order to advance to get those souls. Now this mode featured no bleed out death, so if you were in last stand you'd get back up after a certain amount of time, but you'd be useless on the ground, and whichever team made it to the end of the race first was the winner. How awesome does that game mode sound? I honestly think this should definitely have not been cut from the game, because Grief/Turned is like very simple, nice game modes to play for a while, but they do get a little bit boring, and I feel like this would have quite a longevity, and you could see quite a lot of like different mechanics and also sort of like speed runs, because this game mode actually has an end goal or objective, which of course makes the teamwork dream work. But the other game mode that definitely sounds a hell of a lot less predictable is a game mode called Meet. Now this split players into two teams on a map with a barrier in the middle, a bit like volleyball, and the reason why people mainly heard about this game mode that was cut was an in-game image of this Meet game mode where you could physically see like a barrier in the middle of the map which sort of cut the map in two. In that leaked screenshot from the game files you can see a stake being thrown, and that was the initial temporary Meet. There are no specifics exactly on how the game mode worked, but judging by how the Meet works inside of Grief, if a player is holding the Meet, then zombies are attracted to it, and within this mode, whichever side the Meet was on, zombies would spawn and attack those players. Now the most interesting thing about this game mode is the final Meet players actually threw Richtofen's head rather than a piece of meat. Now I'm sure you've heard about this because a few months ago this did come to light thanks to a YouTube user who goes by the name of Sanad SK. What's interesting is within this Meet game mode there were hoops to give you power-ups, so assuming you would throw the meat within the hoops to get yourself power-ups, and you could take skill shots, a bit like basketball, to be really accurate and to make sure you were getting these power-ups, but you had to aim, and these were a big risk to the game as the zombies were attacking the players that had the meat. You can find this Richtofen head within the Mob of the Dead game files, so that doesn't make it very clear if this was a thing only in the Mob of the Dead map or if it was something that existed beforehand, but the idea of anything in a game mode involving you throwing Richtofen's head sounds absolutely insane. I really wish this was never cut, because one, who wouldn't want to throw Richtofen's head across a map? It sounds crazy, and also there could be some storyline implications due to the fact we're throwing Richtofen's head. It sounds absolutely crazy and it looks so ridiculously awesome. It's a very big shame that this never saw the light of day. And something else I want to mention as well is all the game modes I've mentioned, as well as the ones which we did see like Turned and Survival, were tested on different parts of the Jimmy Zielinski side of DLC such as Diarize and Buried, but they never actually shipped. So what this basically means is you could have played Grief inside of Buried's Garden Maze and Buried's Church as their own separate sort of map locations. There was single team survival in the closed bus in transit, so rather than you being able to leave the bus, you were never going to leave the bus. You were stuck in there, and there was a survival mode based just on surviving in the bus. They also had the Meet game mode in the tunnel of transit, which is really cool and very weird to think, because that tunnel is huge, and if they took out all of the denizens, then that would be a fun little long playable area. And also the race game mode was available in the town portion of transit. There we go guys, that is the game modes that we sadly never saw inside of Call of Duty Zombies. And even Jason's been asked by myself, would we ever see game modes like this return in Black Ops 3 Zombies, because they're really fun, and he said he could easily activate these at the flick of a switch, but he'd rather them make sense story wise for it to be added. So basically that sounds like it's not going to happen. Maybe in the next game perhaps, but I'm going to be making a video soon discussing on some potential other game mode ideas that they could add in the next Treyarch game, as this really made me feel like these sort of co-op fun griefy things that are not solely focused on just surviving rounds and like doing Easter eggs and stuff is really fun and a nice alternative option if you don't quite have enough time to be able to invest playing a map for long periods of time. These generally sound like they would change the sort of format of the zombies and just make it a load of fun to play with friends for multiple reasons. Let me know your thoughts on all of these down below in the comment section. On screen now you'll see links to the past 2 episodes of this series. Make sure to go check them out if you've missed any. But if you did enjoy, drop a like rating, make sure to subscribe for more, and I'll catch you next time.